Thank you, Willie. Joining us now, member of the House Homeland Security and Veterans Affairs Committees, Democratic Congressman Max Rose of New York. He is a veteran of the war in Afghanistan and a recipient of the Bronze Star and Purple Heart. And you returned from a 2-week deployment with the National Guard to assist in the coronavirus response. It gives you a lot of different angles, given your position, as to look at, what is at the heart of the matter of this, what is needed. And also, I guess I'd like to start, Max, with you responding to the president wanting to reopen the country, having this multi-phased plan, but again, not stepping in on testing on a nationalized level, like I asked our last guest. Is that the best way to streamline and get testing to the American people?
Well, thank you so much again for having me. Let me first just say this about the experience that I just came out of, spending 2 weeks standing up a COVID-only facility in New York City. My service just now pales in comparison, though, to what I saw from our frontline medical professionals. There was a doctor there who had lost family members. He also had family members who were sick in the ICU. And he was still doing 18 hours a day. Nurses who hadn't even seen their loved ones, their children, for over a month because they didn't want to get them sick. And they were still driving on. I think about our last huddle. Right before we saw our first patient, we stood up this facility in 6 days. And the soldiers who were there in their own uniform applauded the nurses and the doctors in their uniform because they are the frontline medical professionals. So we bring this full circle to your question, because it was those folks who show us what our true potential is. This president, his team, they have a point in terms of a regional opening of the country. They have a point that there are roles for the governors in terms of setting specific policies for their states and coordinating with other governors. But here's what they're missing, is that there are only specific things that the United States of America, not individual states, can accomplish, and testing is front and center there. Let's remove the mystery from what goes into this testing. It's a swab, it's a vial, it's a little alcohol pad. They do the test on someone and they send it to a lab, and that lab has equipment and reagents. That's all this is. But just like with PPE, the United States government has to step in and scale up production exponentially. The United States of America was the only one that could send a man to the moon, that could win World War II, win the Cold War. It wasn't states and counties and cities. This is the same exact thing. We have to scale up testing, and then we can open this economy back up.
Is the president foregoing his duty here? Is that what you're saying?
No, look, this is not a matter of duty. What we're talking about here, though, is getting the job done. This is operational, and we are at war. You've had several people on your show just today who have described this as a war zone, and the president is the commander-in-chief. So nothing would make me happier than to see him step up, assume the full authorities that he has at his disposal as the commander-in-chief to win this war. And that requires us to dramatically scale up production of PPE and testing equipment to include antibody testing, which is absolutely going to be critical. If we do not protect our frontline medical staff, it does not matter how much equipment we have. The only thing that is holding us back on Staten Island, for instance, in my congressional district, is medical staffing. That is what holds people back right now. And we have got to protect them with PPE. States and cities shouldn't be competing against each other. And we are going to see the exact same dynamic with testing unless the federal government steps in. It's actually quite simple.
Hey, Congressman, it's Willie Geist. Good to see you as always.
Hey, Willie, how are you?
I'm glad to see you on the front lines of this fight and coming back and telling us about it. I want to ask you a question that was a hypothetical that I asked yesterday to Vice President Biden, because he's not currently sitting in office, which is what he would say to somebody who's watching what's happening in the country right now and saying, I'm losing my job. My small business has closed. I'm having trouble putting food on the table. For you, it's not hypothetical. I'm sure it's real. As you walk around Staten Island, you have people who say, Congressman, I get it. This thing is bad, but my livelihood's going down the drain. I got to get some help here. I got to open my business. What are you saying to those people, to your constituents who might put that question to you?
Well, a few things. First of all, we feel your frustration when it looks like people are just kicking the can down the road. You announce something, and then a month later, it hasn't changed, and you're starting to feel that deep economic pain. It is the responsibility of the federal government to step in and provide you with that support you need to provide food for your family until we get out of this. But let's look at the history of pandemics here. And it is usually the second surge that kills people. It is usually the second surge that, when you look back statistically, is what ultimately took more lives than anything else. So when we talk about trying to open this economy back up and get that small business back open and get you back to work permanently, we are talking about doing it for the long run, not just doing it for a few weeks and then having to close it back up again and go through all this pain of losing thousands of people every single day. But until then, this is the United States of America. We're the greatest country in the history of the world, and under no circumstances are we going to let you go hungry. Under no circumstances are we going to let you not be able to provide for your children. This is, like I said, this is not where this is supposed to happen. Greatest country in the history of the world. And that's what I would tell people. But we have to have empathy in our politics. We have to understand that people are going through deep, dark moments that they could have never foreseen, and they didn't do anything wrong. And we have to be there for them.
Congressman Max Rose, thank you very much for your service and for your voice on this show this morning. And still ahead, the White